Let's get straight to it. First up tonight is the leader of Sinn Féin, the woman tipped to be a future Taoiseach. Would you welcome, please, MaryLouLateShow. Nice to see you.
Hello, Ryan.
Hello, MaryLou.
So you invite me a week late?
Well, we just didn't see you as a surprise act on the toy show.
Indeed, yeah. Next year,
hopefully. We've got to talk serious business. We've got a lot of places to go. We've got to talk about United Ireland. We've got to talk about housing. We've got to talk about the prospect of you being Taoiseach. But we've got to start with the serious business of the Special Criminal Court first and foremost. And I'll ask you, do you accept, to start with, that some of the evidence you've been hearing is of considerable concern to people? Would you agree with that contention?
Well, I'd go further than that. I think the whole case is of considerable concern to all of us. I represent communities, Ryan, bear in mind, that have been devastated by a heroin epidemic, devastated again by an ongoing drugs epidemic, and then traumatised by what's referred to as gangland violence, a term I don't like because it gives it a facade almost of bravado or even glamour. The people who are before the courts, in my view, are people whose criminal thuggery have literally devastated decent, hard-working communities. And the job of work through the Special Criminal Court, through the An Garda Síochána, is to get these people behind bars as quickly as possible.
So the judges and the jury and everyone else will decide that, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. And let me say that there's the case underway is clearly an important one, and we won't say anything that might jeopardise it.
And when you think of what happens in that and the stuff that you've been hearing, do you see a point where when the case draws to a conclusion that you'd be in a position to confront some of the things you've been hearing, come back in front, maybe here or in front of the Irish people and say, this is how I feel about this, that and the other?
Absolutely. I would hope, and I know anybody who knows me and who knows my track record actually knows how I feel very strongly on these issues. Obviously, I can't comment on specific individuals who are before the courts, but be in absolutely no doubt that my position is of zero tolerance for this kind of criminality and thuggery, and anybody who's involved in it. I don't care who they are. I don't care what their family name is, their surname. They have to be held to account, because this is a scourge across decent communities here in the city of Dublin and beyond.
Okay, and like I say, we could have a very different conversation if it wasn't so sub judice and it's involved in the courts. And as I say, the judges and everyone involved will decide the rights and wrongs of personalities and so forth. But let's move on from there. Okay. You've answered as much, I think, as you can under the circumstances. Your name is constantly associated these days with being future Taoiseach. You're not going to be the next one, because we know Leo Varadkar is in a couple of weeks' time. But beyond that, is that daunting for you?
Well, yes and no.
Right.
Yes, in as much as I'm very conscious that the person who leads government and leads the country takes on a huge responsibility. You take on the responsibility to lead for everyone. And we're living through times where we have a housing crisis, we have a crisis in healthcare provision. I'm very concerned that so many of our young people are again finding themselves almost forced to leave the country. We need to stop that. We need to keep the talent, the energy and the brilliance of our young people at home. So it's a huge job of work. So of course you'd be foolhardy not to feel a little bit of pressure of that. But on balance, I feel more a sense of purpose, a sense of excitement, because this is a great country. We have huge potential, huge opportunities. We can do so much better than we are doing now. And I would relish, Ryan, the opportunity to demonstrate how a woman would be Taoiseach, how a Republican would be Taoiseach, and how we could lead positively in the time ahead. So it's that balance of things. But you know yourself, anybody who's ever taken on a big challenge in their life or has had the prospect, and it's still only the prospect, I'm not at all presumptuous about this, of taking on a big challenge. It's always going to be a balance of a little bit of trepidation. You have to have a bit of an adrenaline push so that you'll perform and you actually deliver for people.
And you mentioned being a woman Taoiseach. Is that important to you, or are we beyond that?
No, we're not beyond it. I mean, I think it's important that women and girls know in our society that there's no place that we cannot go, no job that's beyond us, no responsibility that's beyond us. And politics is still very, very male. I mean, you look even to the Dáil now, and we've made great strides, but we are still very much a minority. Don't get me wrong, we need men in politics as well. We need diversity in politics, but women are good at this. Women are good at getting things done, making decisions, thinking practically, and in a very hands-on way. So yes, I mean, we've never had a woman as Taoiseach.
Yes.
So why not? I mean, it's a century on. For 100 years, you know, we've had different characters. We've had the same two parties essentially running the show. So why not a woman
Let me ask you about the 30% and thereabouts that you're hovering around in the polls. Extraordinary numbers. For the last couple of times we've spoken, that was a different time, clearly. What do you say to the extra people beyond that 30% who say, I just don't see it, I don't get Sinn Féin, I don't understand Sinn Féin, I don't want to vote for them? How would you say to them, don't be concerned? How would you allay their fears about a Sinn Féin government?
Well, look, first of all,
because the other 30 you've got, so you don't need to worry about them.
No, well, I mean, I wouldn't be quite as complacent as that. That's not really how it works. I mean, every one of those people matters.
Okay.
And what I would say to you is we will continue to work hard, to work harder, to set out our stall. And I mean, I'm a realist. I know that you earn people's trust. Mm-hmm. I know that every person who will make a decision, I hope, to come out and vote for change and to give us the chance and the opportunity to show what we can do and judge us then. I know for each and every one of them, we will have to continue demonstrating not just that we can critique government, but that we actually have new ideas. And I have to say, like, I'm not a one-woman band. On your own, you don't change things. On my own, I would never change the many things that we need to change in Ireland. But I've got a great team around me. Mm-hmm. I think that inspires a level of confidence and trust. And to those who haven't yet decided that they might give us that opportunity to lead, I would just say, stay tuned, give us a fair hearing, listen to what we have to say, and then at least give us the shot at convincing you that, you know, that we make a move and that we get a chance to do things differently and to demonstrate how we can make progress.
When would you like a border poll to take place?
I think it'll happen in this decade.
Okay.
What I would like to happen now, and I think what needs to happen now as a matter of urgency, is we need to start the preparation. I mean, who would have thought, you talked about the 30% polling rate, but who would have thought a year ago, 2 years ago, that you would have for the first time a Republican, a nationalist First Minister in the North, Michelle O'Neill.
Yes.
And yet that happened. So change is underway politically, demographically. We all know this. And I think the responsible thing to do now is to start making the preparations, because what we need to achieve is peaceful, orderly and democratic change. And that means, Ryan, that the work needs to get done now. Let
me ask you about, there's a poll I understand in the Irish Times tomorrow which talks about an All-Ireland poll. It says the island wants a border poll, but it will say there will be a no in the north and a yes in the south. That's the poll as of tomorrow, from my understanding. That's a conundrum, isn't it? How are you going to convince everyone to come on board if it's split like
by
that?
Talking to people. I mean, just bear in mind, any polling data that you are seeing now and people staking out their position is before really government has signalled a seriousness about this debate. You know, for a lot of people who would say, well, you know, is this a thing? Is this actually going to happen?
Yes.
Could we actually see a united Ireland? Is this just a dream of the fourth Greenfield? But we can.
I agree.
We can.
So let's talk about that, for example. There'd have to be a new flag, wouldn't there?
Well, I think the tricolour captures the green and the orange, you know, the two great traditions and peace.
Okay, so you wouldn't revisit that?
I am not going to selectively say we can't talk about anything. I think we need to talk about everything.
So it's on the table.
But let me make this point. Anybody who talks to me about Irish reunification and change and what it might mean, the first issue that they raise, North and South, is the issue of the health system. I believe we need an Irish national health system. And I believe that that is possible. I think we can only achieve that on an all-island basis. People have raised questions about education and investment opportunities and employment opportunities.
You know, don't you? I know, to say respectfully, you know more than anyone else the power of symbols and symbolism, and especially for people who identify as British, for example. So if you say the Irish flag, it strikes me as you're saying that we can talk about it. If you say the national anthem, for example,
we'll talk about everything.
So everything's
Aaron Naveen is, as far as I'm concerned, is our national anthem. We have a conversation on everything, but I think it is a mistake to jump straight for the symbolic piece, to jump straight for the anthem and the flag, because...
And the 12th of July is a public holiday for the island.
I have said before that I believe that would be an appropriate thing. That's my view. That's my view.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely. That's my view. But don't underestimate the fact that people realise you have to put bread on the table, you have to cater for your family. We're living through a cost of living crisis, and a lot of people are really, really struggling. They're struggling in the north, perhaps even more so because the DUP won't go into the executive, so there's no government functioning there. So people understand the value of what's called the bread and butter issues, but the bread and butter issues are the things that define the quality of your life.
Let's go there, as you mentioned, them, about housing, for example. And is the Sinn Féin belief and hope to build, am I right in saying, Owen Breen was saying this, 100,000 houses in 5 years? Is that public homes?
Yeah.
How?
By building them. I mean, our objective is to build houses, to cut rents. Our objective is, if in government, to use all of the power, all of the agencies of the state
show me the money.
To simply get the money isn't the issue.
Well, it is. You can't build houses out of nothing, so how do you pay for them?
No, and even the current government, if you listen to them, when they talk about their numbers and their figures and their targets are wrong, and so on, everybody agrees the issue isn't resources, the issue isn't money, the issue is how you use the money, and the issue is around getting the job done. So currently, we have a scenario where a lot of money was spent and a lot of favourable treatment was given to big international funds, cuckoo funds, vulture funds, call them what you will, to build some apartment blocks that are hugely expensive and that nobody can buy. That's the wrong approach. The right approach is to use public land for public housing. We've lots of serviced land and to point construction in the direction of affordable housing and of social housing, and to simply get the job done.
You believe, as leader of Sinn Féin, that if you do get to the highest office in the land, politically, as Taoiseach, that 5 years, 100,000 homes, that's your pledge?
Yes.
And you believe it's deliverable?
Yes, absolutely. I believe we're Irish, Ryan. We build things. Do you know, I have been, when you go away and you talk to people in America or Australia, and Irish people looking at home and they say, what's going on with housing? And we're not unique in having a housing challenge, but we seem to be uniquely incapable of getting to grips with it. And what people say is, the Irish have built everywhere. We're not splitting the atom here. It's not open heart surgery. We need to construct homes. But for that to happen, you have to have the right leadership and you have to have the right approach. And the state and the government has to lead. The day of leaving things to private developers, crossing your fingers and hoping that things will come right is over. The days of saying to renters, well, look, we hear your pain, we know you're struggling, but no, we're not going to cut rents. No, we're not going to cap rents. No, we're not going to have an eviction ban for anything more than 6 months. These are the types of decisive actions that have to be taken.
Given where you're heading towards, again, if it happens, you may not be Taoiseach, you may be. I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
But there's scrutiny and people want to know about you. And there was a book released about you not too long ago. Have you read that book?
I have.
And what do you think of it?
Well, I suppose over the course of 20 years now, lots of things have been written about me. Acres of pages have been written about me. That's okay. I mean, I'm a public figure and that goes with the territory. But my family aren't. And my family aren't up for grabs. And in the book, there is things written about my childhood, written about a time in our lives that was hugely traumatic for my family. And I think to write that, to find the sore spot in someone's life, particularly trauma when you're a child and you've no influence over it. And then to write that up almost like as a gotcha, and to describe that as it is in the book as like a skeleton in your closet, I think is wrong.
Okay.
I think it's kind of despicable.
You didn't see it as biography, and that's what happens in a biography. You saw it as more hurtful than that by the sound of it. You seem like you were hurt by what you read.
Absolutely, I was furious, and I was hurt mainly for my mother. I mean, I'm a public figure. If there's things to be said and analysed about me, that's fine. But I happen to believe, I mean, you're a public figure too. I happen to think that our families are not up for grabs. And I think that for myself, but I think that for all others. So maybe in the book you learn more about the author than you learn about the subject.
Do you live in a mansion?
No. I live in Cabra.
Is that what they say? You live in a... Is that what's the...
Yeah, I was highly amused by that. I live in our family home, our only home in Cabra. And I consider myself so lucky to live in the greatest neighbourhood, in the greatest city in the world. Right. But it's far from a mansion. It's our family home where we've raised our kids, and we have a mortgage on it that we have still a little bit to go on to pay back.
What about you as somebody who has a lot of... You're constantly on the go. Every time I turn on the TV, you're either opening something or you're giving a speech or you're in the Dáil, you're constantly go. When do you wind down?
Well, actually, when I go home to my mansion, not. I sit back in my palatial mansion and I say, oh...
Do you call your servants to help you at that point?
Yes, I have. I have two adult children servants now who are kind of rebelling. You see, that's the thing. Okay. I've always tried to keep, and I think fairly successfully, a definition between like my political, and I love my work. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I feel privileged to do this job. But then at home, I am mammy. I close my front door.
Glass of wine?
And I like a glass of wine.
Are you watching anything good?
Not at the minute.
Any box setty binging?
Box setty binging, not at the minute. I'm busy now, but don't worry. When Christmas comes, if you have any tips, you can.
I do. I've got loads. Yeah, I'll tell you.
And another thing I do is I do a lot of walking.
Okay.
That's kind of a post-COVID thing. I think like lots of people, you were working from home.
Yeah.
Your routine got kind of all messed up. For me, that meant I wasn't doing quite as much running around. So I made a promise to myself each day to give an hour to myself. So I use that hour, brilliant for the head. Yeah. So I use that hour to walk. So you see me out and about.
There was an upside possibly to the book. I had the impression from sheer, not rumour, but just from reading from afar that you had this quite gilded existence growing up. Yeah, you went to a great school. Yeah, you went to a great college and so forth. But it wasn't without its complication. I'm not prying, by the way. No, I just think there can be a projection onto you, or you the other way around. But it wasn't quite as straightforward. I don't want to upset your mum or anything like that when I say this, but do you see what I'm... Do you know where
she wouldn't find that upsetting at all.
She probably would go, she strikes me as being a very strong person, actually.
Oh, she's terrific. She's
And
brilliant.
a very important person in your life.
Oh, yeah. And at times the most important person she was. I mean, I come from a single parent family, and if I have an advantage or a privilege, it's that I'm very, very well educated, and that's down to my mother. She made sure that all of us hit the books, and whether we liked it or not, and sometimes we didn't like it. Yeah. So no, I don't come from privilege, but I got opportunities and I took them. And the chances that I got, I would like everybody to have, you know.
Let me ask you before we say goodbye about the prospect of government, and obviously coalition is in the air. You don't...
I knew you'd ask me this.
Well, you knew it was going to come.
You love this question.
I do love this question because you'd probably like to say, well, I won't put words in your mouth. Obviously, an overall majority would be your dream ticket.
That would be great, yeah.
Chances of that?
I don't know. That's in the hands of the great Irish electorate.
Do you see it as a possibility?
I think it would be a very long shot. What I do know is, because God knows, after the 2020 election, I literally could not walk the length of myself without getting pulled by somebody. Generally, actually Dublin taxi drivers, but others also, giving out yards to me saying, you didn't run enough candidates.
Oh, yes.
So I would try and explain this and explain. I've just given up. I just said, to anybody out there, I am very sorry that I did not run enough candidates, and I will not make that mistake again.
Okay.
So we're going to run lots of candidates.
But you're very contrite about that.
I am.
Yeah. Did you see that, the way you're talking like that, did you see that as a personal mistake? You seem to be taking a lot of personal...
Well, listen, you see, when you're the leader and you're the boss...
There's only one, really, isn't
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it wasn't your mistake. It was your mistake.
So when Leo Varadkar turned around at his party conference recently and said Sinn Féin out, essentially, as coalition partners, you thought...
Well, I thought, look, I mean, everyone's entitled to say whatever they want to say, but it occurred to me that it was kind of more of the same. I mean, after the last election, there was a whole concerted effort to say, not to us, but to the people who voted for us, that somehow their vote was somehow lesser, or that their representatives shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't have an opportunity at government. And I think that flies in the face of fairness. I think it flies in the face of respecting people's democratic choices. I mean, don't get me wrong, I disagree fundamentally with Leo Varadkar on many things. I believe we should protect Irish neutrality. I don't believe that we should have gotten away with the €500,000 cap for big bankers. I think that's insane.
There's a but there.
No, but there's only one but, and it's this. Unlike him, I will respect whatever votes are cast by the Irish people.
Would you be comfortable?
And I actually believe people should talk to each other. I mean, it would be a long shot for Sinn Féin and Fine Gael to form a government.
But you're saying don't shut it down.
Well, what I'm saying is you don't shut down the possibility of respectfully acknowledging somebody's democratic mandate and talking to them.
Okay, so
I think that's what.
Are you okay with the prospect of a Fianna Fáil Sinn Féin coalition?
Well, my best outcome, I think the best outcome from the next election would be
the left.
A new government without Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael for the first time in over a century. I think that's what would be an incredible.
And do you think you'd be in a position to bring together the parties of the left, which is obviously the alternative? Are you confident in that?
Well, if like me, people believe that is a live option, an attractive option, something that we should do, and if people vote in that way, well then yes, I would move heaven and earth to put that government together and to lead that government.
Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
And see you soon. MaryLou McConnell. Thank you very much.